Allow me to begin by appreciating the team behind the African Wisdom Summit. I think we can do much better than that. For this great vision and preparing such a platform. I especially acknowledge the presence of the principal partner of the, if you'll allow me to say, AWS. Is that okay? Mrs. Christine Musisi, I'm very grateful to you for carrying this great vision for our continent and her people. I'm also deeply honored to have the privilege of being one of the speakers of this summit. I would also like to particularly acknowledge our host and lead, Dr. Dennis Sempebwa. May the Lord increase you and expand your boundaries of influence. Allow me to also acknowledge the esteemed delegates from across Africa gathered here at the African Wisdom Summit. We appreciate you for the sacrifice you make and the daily labor for the sake of our continent. I need to pass my apologies for not being here yesterday, but from the feedback I've received, it seemed it was a splendid day and an amazing experience yesterday. So even though I wasn't present, but I'd also want to appreciate the different speakers and panelists whose invaluable contribution have set the stage thus far. Check 1, 2. Okay. Whose contribution have set the stage thus far, and those who are coming to add on to this great work. It is an honor to stand before you this morning and to add my own contribution as well. With all protocol observed, I will now proceed with what I have prepared this morning to just contribute towards this great vision. If we're not careful and deliberate about change, we may end up being left with powerful African proverbs and nothing to showcase for the wisdom that these wise sayings have produced. One man once said, "Talk is cheap." It is time to walk the talk. It is time to implement what has already been said, for without deliberate action, there is no change. A wise man once said in one of his proverbs, "A good man leaves an inheritance to his children's children." In essence, he's not just thinking about his children, but he's thinking of his children's children. He has taken the responsibility to ensure that his vision goes beyond his generation and the next generation to accommodate the third generation. What Africa needs is visionary leaders and not more politicians. For where there is no vision, the people perish. Vusi Thembekwayo, hopefully I've pronounced it correct, of South Africa during an interview spoke of a powerful observation. And I'll paraphrase. And he said this in this interview, that the first politicians that Africa had were leaders. The likes of Mwalimu Julius Kambarage Nyerere of Tanzania, Nelson Mandela of South Africa, Kwame Nkrumah of Ghana, Patrice Lumumba of Congo, Thomas Sankara of Burkina Faso. These were visionary leaders who became heads of state. Now, these being among the first politicians across the continent that Africa had, we then as Africans have assumed that every politician is a leader. Let that sink in for a few moments. The late Dr. Miles Monroe once said, the difference between a politician and a leader is this. A politician thinks about the next election, but a leader thinks about the next generation. I have heard this so many times. The children are leaders of tomorrow, and the youths are the leaders of today. Yet what is the reality? What is being done to mentor, encourage, and prepare the leaders of today? Is their potential harnessed, or are they seen as a threat? The painful reality, which is an African pandemic, is that leaders are not elected by their leadership ability, nor by the national vision they possess. Rarely have we seen in the transition of power the passing of the baton of a national vision. It seems like any new leader who comes into power has their own vision, and there's the lack of continuity. Hence, there's limitation of progress and development. In contrast, we have seen leaders on whom the sun is sitting in the seats of power. There is an ancient prophet who prophesied and said, your old men shall dream dreams. Your young men shall see visions. Can any leadership principle or truth be gleaned from this? Interesting fact. Mwalimu Julius Kambarage Nyerere became the first president of Tanzania at the age of 39 in 1961. Kwame Nkrumah became the first prime minister of the Gold Coast at the age of 43 in 1952. Kenneth Kaunda became the first president of Zambia at the age of 40 in 1964. Patrice Lumumba became the first prime minister of the then Republic of Congo at the age of 35 in 1960. Thomas Sankara of Burkina Faso got into power at the age of 34 in 1983. The disheartening reality is that the current leaders in the seats of power, instead of using their position to foster a national vision and secure the posterity of a generation to come, are instead amassing great wealth for themselves. Whilst this is all happening under the keen observation of the now leaders, the young men and the young women. What example are we setting for the next generation? What should we expect of the tomorrow's leaders if this is what they're learning and observing from their fathers? When will this vicious cycle come to an end? I don't have time to talk about Africa's inability to invest in their own. I have never seen an oppressor who desires to see the oppressed thriving and flourishing, especially when they have a lot to gain while the oppressed remains marginalized. The hope of Africa is not without, but within. Yet we favor those who once oppressed us over those who carry a vision, a burden for the next generation and a better Africa. Should investors only be found in the first world countries? Were they born investors? Can't Africa invest in her own to produce her own investors who will have the genuine interest of Africa and the prosperity of her people at heart? If Africa is ever to prosper, then Africa must look within and search for visionary leaders with a national vision for the children of Africa. Nor will they say, I quote, see here or see there, for indeed the kingdom of God is within you. Dr. Luke, having recorded the words of the greatest visionary leader that ever walked on the face of the earth. I humbly submit what I felt in my heart to share with you this morning. Thank you for your attention.